Petron's system, as the cargo freighter Knott's White Star was discovered adrift and lifeless, just hours after losing contact. The ship, owned by Giant Shipping LLC, had been on a routine run near the border of Holding and Painan space. Commonwealth patrol vessel PCS Royal Tidings discovered the wreck. No life signs, no survivors. Voidwatch employees have locked down the site. Giant Shipping has issued an apology and pledged full cooperation. Voidwatch has declined to comment. In other news, Delphi Virtual Entertainment has launched a new simulation of what soil might have been like before its destruction, and Treyarchs are already saying it's one of the most—
Hey, Agent Guy, we're almost here.
I closed the broadcast and looked out the window. In the cold darkness of space, where usually there'd be only the void, there was a full crime scene suspended in 3D. Voidwatch ships orbited the White Star, some shining their lights directly onto the hull, others projecting flickering holograms that marked the site perimeter. The ship drifted like a wounded animal, its hull breached, bleeding metal and debris. A gaping hole split the upper structure. The explosion had torn it apart violently, blackening the metal around the edges. I didn't need to zoom in to imagine what floated out there among the debris. But there was work to do. The pilot was already easing us toward the portside airlock. With a gentle thud, our ship docked. The rear door hissed open. I nodded once to the pilot and stepped into the dark, into whatever the White Star had left behind. The White Star was a small ship, mostly cargo space, with only a few rooms for the crew. The airlock led into a stripped-down common room where tables and chairs once sat for meetings. Now, they were all a kilometer away, floating in space. One door was missing. Through it, I saw the room with the hole. I'd already guessed the explosive was serious. Anything that punches through a hull isn't cheap. But for it to have torn interior doors off? Someone paid a premium to make sure this ship stayed hid. Technicians, both Treyarch and Painan, floated around, setting up equipment. The Treyarchs wore Voidwatch black, a few with the white shoulder stripes marking them as investigators. The Painans wore bulky brown suits and oversized transparent helmets that made them look like old-world deep-sea divers. I was still taking it all in when one of the Treyarchs turned toward me.
Hello, Agent Cowl. I'm Agent Cutler. I've been assigned to this case. We'll begin the investigation together.
Agent Cutler was a rising star in the Voidwatch investigative scene, which meant you were either good at inspecting every millimeter of a crime scene or at manipulating suspects in the interrogation room. Cutler seemed to be the former. They had already handled a number of high-profile cases and were rising quickly through the ranks. They were already a senior investigator. If current trends held, they'd become chief investigator of Voidwatch's entire operations branch. Two things bothered me. One, on my personal notes regarding Cutler, all of their details were clear except for one box: motive. Cutler's rise had piqued my interest a while ago, mostly because I couldn't figure out why they did it. Sure, fame and fortune would be enough of an answer for most Treyarchs, but Cutler didn't seem to even enjoy it. They solved mysteries with mechanical precision and mostly saved the credits they made from the job. A humorless fellow, to be sure. The other thing that bothered me was their assignment to this case. Piracy was a big deal, no doubt about it, but happened pretty regularly in Treyarch space. And to me, the trade route to the Commonwealth was bound to be hit by the same scourge of the void. If anything, I was surprised it hadn't happened sooner. But if a heavyweight like Cutler was being assigned to it, Voidwatch must think this might be the start of something bigger. And I didn't like that one bit. I realized I'd been silent for too long.
Right, well, should we start with the hole?
The agent slightly cocked their head in that slightly too perfect way that always came off condescending.
Naturally. But first, let me introduce our contact from the PIC.
They motioned to a nearby Painan, who walked over with stiff, uncertain steps. His hands hovered awkwardly, unused to zero-G. His voice emerged from a brass speaker grill on his chest plate.
Good day to you. I am Constable Jonathan, representing the Painan Interstellar Constabulary. and it is my esteemed duty to serve as your liaison to the Commonwealth throughout the course of this inquiry.
Cutler and I exchanged a knowing look. The Tradiarch public generally held the Painan and their Commonwealth in high regard. But for us in Voidwatch, it was more complicated. Past interactions with the PIC hadn't exactly been productive. I nodded to Cutler, and we began walking toward the scene, with Jonathan waddling after us. We entered the dormitory. Narrow hallways lined with compartments, crew quarters, charging ports, small lockers. Above us, the hole yawned wide across the ceiling. The metal edges were jagged, blackened, bent inward like the teeth of a giant maw. Cutler wandered off, scanning the space. After a moment, they turned back.
Are you coming? We need to look for clues.
I have a better idea.
I opened the equipment menu on my digital interface and activated a favorite tool. A hatch on my right shoulder opened, and a small drone flew up, hovering with jets on either side of its spherical body.
All right, I scan the area.
The drone chirped cheerfully and began emitting blue light towards the hole in the hull. Cutler watched, unimpressed.
Really? An investigator drone? Haven't those things been discontinued for recording data that draws false conclusions?
I kept my voice level.
It wasn't the drones. It was the operators. They gather data. It's up to people like you
I pointed at them.
to interpret it. Supposedly Voidwatch has plenty of those.
Cutler shook their head. Just then, Jonathan finally caught up.
Verily, this vessel is quite remarkable. O prithee, a flying automaton. It doth please me to remark we possess such marvels as well.
Oh yeah? And where are they? Surely you could use them.
I turned to look at Agent Cutler. Their backtalk seemed a little much for someone who didn't know this guy. Sure, nobody likes a foreign spook, but still.
Indeed, their presence would grace this place, yet they are ill-equipped for the vastness of space. The aqueous substance within their engine would succumb to freezing, thereby rendering the mechanism inoperative. Moreover, I fear they may prove too cumbersome for these narrow corridors.
As Sir Copsalot was going on, I got back to me. They had finished their scan and were ready to present their findings. I got Cutler's and Jonathan's attention and told it to display it with their holographic projector. The corridor was lit up in orange light by a 3D representation of the white star, with the hole in focus.
All right, I simulate the last moments before the ship was hit. Let's say the last 10 seconds.
I chirped in affirmation, and the hollow ship rewound to before the incident. The ship was moving through the void, business as usual. Then the top of the ship blew up like an overcharged battery.
Gentlemen, what manner of circumstance might have wrought this?
A missile, obviously. Couldn't have been any other kind of projectile. Not even a mass driver could have done this kind of damage. And the ship, according to this drone, didn't veer off before it was hit, so I doubt another ship moved in close enough to plant an explosive charge.
I simulate the damage if it was caused by the largest commercially available missile.
The hologram rewinded again, with the white star flying forwards. Then, a missile came in from the edge of projection, and the ship veered away. It wasn't enough, and a hole was blown in the ship. However, the ship continued to move and left the system in short order. I looked towards Cutler.
Seems like it wasn't a missile. The ship would have detected it, and it wouldn't have done enough damage to disable the ship.
What if it was more powerful? It could have been black market or military grade, and the ship's ability to detect it would depend on that.
Maybe, but someone getting their hands on something like that would have been bigger news than this ship. I don't buy it.
Pray tell, what of the crew?
Cutler and I looked at Jonathan. We were confused as to what he meant.
What hath brought about their demise? Dost thou not possess the faculties to endure amidst the vastness of the firmament?
If Cutler could look any more exasperated with the pain standing in front of them, they would leak steam like an overclocked coolant line.
The explosion killed them. If I had to guess, the crew were concentrated in the common room and the dorms, and the fireball scorched their circuits to a crisp. Even if they weren't close enough to die instantly, the pressure from sudden decompression would have ripped their internals apart.
Before Jonathan could ask another question, I made another request to I.
What if a missile didn't do it? Simulate the damage if it was caused by a demolition charge.
Cutler stopped glaring at the constable and looked back at me.
Didn't you hear me before? It couldn't have been a planted explosive. They would have seen it coming even more than a missile. Don't you?
Before Cutler could continue his lecture, my drone had finished. It projected the familiar ship, this time with the addition of a little surprise on its overhead. 1 second it was fine. The next, an explosion rocked the ship, tore open a hole, and cut power to it in its entirety. Cutler scoffed.
Yeah, a charge. Could have done that, except for the lack of opportunity. The ship would have detected an unwanted visitor, and anything trying to attach it mid-flight would have shown up as soon as they turned on their engines.
Perchance the explosive was affixed by the very crew themselves, akin to some manner of deceit or conspiracy.
Unlikely. It killed them. If it were crew-planted, they would have triggered it remotely, or survived it.
I didn't argue. Cutler was right, and we had bigger questions to answer. I continued my thought.
What if the charge was launched at the ship? It wouldn't have shown up on most sensors, and visually, at least at a distance. It would look like just another piece of space debris, no threat to the ship.
That would still require something to launch it, which would need something to propel it. They would have seen it a kilometer away if they were just sitting near the space lane.
That sparked a thought, the kind of notion that is either a stroke of brilliance or sheer delusion.
Simulate how close another ship would have to be in order to fling an explosive charge onto the hull, assuming the ships were going in opposite directions and that the White Star didn't have enough time to react to it.
As the drone ran the calculations, Cutler looked completely nonplussed. Jonathan had a similar look, although I guess that was more of a "what's going on" look than a "why are you doing this" look. Eventually I came back, and the hologram started up yet again. As the White Star flew forwards, another ship, represented by a blank outline, flew in its direction, offset by about a half kilometer. Around 25 seconds in, a small dot left the blank ship and landed on the White Star, which shortly blew up. I let out a small chuckle in satisfaction of a guess that turned out to be right.
Okay, that could have happened, but that still leaves the who and the why. We need to find who did this, and why they did it. I mean, not just anyone could have done this, and nobody just blows up ships for fun.
Motive, my least favorite part. I digitally logged a request with Voidwatch's support division to get me a list of ships that were in the system around the same time as the White Star. While I was thinking about how I could get a motive, a Voidwatch technician walked up to the group.
Excuse me, agents. The team working on the ship's systems is done. They say most of them are entirely fried, but the comms still have some salvageable data. Apparently, just before the explosion, the ship received a communications request from an unregistered comm relay inside the system. It didn't say if they accepted it, but it did record the general direction the signal came from. Would you like me to send it to you?
Bingo. I told the tech to send it to me and addressed my fellow agents of the law.
I have a personal shuttle that can find that relay. Would either of you care to join me?
Cutler and Jonathan both nodded, and we went to my ship, one step closer to justice. The dark void of space passed by both passenger side windows as the three of us sat in silence aboard my pilot's ship. To my left, Cutler was looking down, most likely at a private digital interface. In front of me, Jonathan stared directly at me. I realized he might have been watching me the whole time. I'd been writing in my workbook, probably what Cutler had been doing too, though they'd been at it longer. Seeing nothing better to do, I returned Jonathan's gaze.
You got something to say?
I did possess a number of inquiries.
Well, this is certainly a way to spend the ride, I sighed.
Sure, what's on your mind?
I am uncertain regarding the protocols of thine esteemed organization. Yet when I customarily engage with thee, it is but a solitary investigator who is designated. However, in this instance, 2 investigators have arrived, Might I inquire as to the reason for such a deviation?
I'd expected something pointless, but that was actually a question I didn't know the answer to either. I tried to come up with something that wouldn't make me sound clueless.
Well, I'm not sure, but as far as I can tell, the bosses thought this could be something big, so they assigned 2 investigators. Better safe than sorry.
Jonathan was about to open his mouth when Cutler jumped in.
I'm the reason.
What?
Pray tell.
The Piracy Division assigned Agent Cowl to the case, but I asked for the assignment. Apparently, both of us working the case was some kind of compromise between piracy and my division.
He asked for this case? But why? And how did he have the pull to make that kind of request happen? Normally, investigators in Voidwatch have almost no capacity to choose which cases they are assigned. And investigators never work cases which a different division has responsibility over.
What prompted your inquiry regarding this particular assignment?
I had reason to believe I'd be useful.
That answer was as cagey as a private prison. I had half a mind to press them further when the pilot spoke up.
We're nearing the relay. Painan, suit up. You're going for a spacewalk.
Jonathan began zipping up his vac suit. He had partially taken it off during the flight. As the craft slowed to a halt, I resolved to ask Cutler one more question.
Cutler, which division are you from exactly?
They looked at me and narrowed their visual sensors.
Special Investigations.
We exited the airlock and were floating in front of a communications relay. My initial impression of the ship-sized device was that it was professional, but secret. It was built well enough to do the job, but hastily enough that nobody would realize it was here. Cutler was already heading towards it with their built-in thrusters, while Jonathan was fiddling with some kind of brass jetpack. I moved in closer with my own thrusters and saw that my colleague was examining the relay.
What do you think?
It looks like a normal comm relay, which, if this was built like the official ones. Here we go, a maintenance panel.
Cutler had found a small metal hatch separate from the rest of the machine. They tried to open it, but found that the opening for the hatch had been welded shut. The techs were already on their way to inspect the relay. So Cutler, Jonathan, who had finally managed to turn on his jetpack, and I decided to hang back until they arrived.
Pray, what discoveries hast thou made?
It's definitely a comm relay. Now we just have to wait for the technicians to arrive.
Doth this relay impart unto thee any discernments?
I couldn't tell if Cutler's face was indicative of annoyance at Jonathan's constant questions, or pleasure at being able to give their professional opinion. Hard to read a robot's face, I suppose.
Well, we now know at least 2 new facts about the case. Number 1, the perpetrators are wealthy. Not many people have the funds and expertise to build a whole relay. Number 2, the White Star was the target of a very deliberate attack. Not only did they plan an attack method that would obscure their involvement, but they also built this entire relay in order to communicate with the ship before destroying it.
I wasn't so sure about that last part.
Are we sure that this relay was built by the attackers? It could just be an unrelated secret relay, and the message arriving when it did could have been a coincidence.
The maintenance panel was welded shut. Nobody would do that unless they weren't planning on using this relay for very long.
They got me there. I looked back at the machine. The technicians were already here, and they were busy cutting into the panel with a laser torch. Still, it would be a little until they got into it, which gave me time to think through a question I'd had since the start of this case.
So, what do we think was the intention here? Besides destroying the ship, the perps didn't take the cargo.
Maybe destroying the ship was the only goal. Could have been some kind of hit, or to make sure the cargo was lost.
Seems like overkill if the target was the crew. They could have gotten them at a port far easier. And if it was the cargo they were after, why? I took a look at the ship's manifest before I got here, and according to it, they were hauling batteries to the Painan. Hardly worth all of this. And even if batteries were the cause of this, to what end? Insurance fraud? An attempt to take a competitor out? I'm not buying it. And we haven't even addressed the purpose of the relay and the message.
Well, we'll know when they're done breaking in.
After a while, The maintenance panel was finally cut open. Inside was a small terminal, the kind that workers use to access the relay. A technician connected to the terminal and began sorting through any data inside.
All right, the main drive is empty. Expected that. We also have the communications drivers. Nothing out of the ordinary there. And finally, there's the comm buffer. If there's any clues to what was sent, it'll be there. Accessing, and it wasn't deleted. Lucky break, we now have exactly what was sent by the relay. It seems like a video file. Sending it to you all now.
The technician sent the file directly to Cutler and me, and to Jonathan's personal device. We all played it. On screen, there was a shadowy figure. It was definitely a Tradiarch. You could tell by the outline. But other than that, there wasn't anything else. The figure began speaking in a deep, artificially distorted voice.
Greetings, crew of the White Star. I have hacked into your communications system, which is why this message accepted itself and is playing all throughout the ship. My demand is simple. You are to send 10,000 Tradiarch credits to the credit wallet with the address 10-215-799-32. If this is not done within 60 seconds of my message finishing, you will all die. I hope you will make the right choice.
The message ended there. I already knew this case had gotten much bigger. Before anyone else could speak, the technician spoke again.
Other than that, there looks to be some metadata attached to the file. According to it, the file came from the Sun Habitat.
The Sun Habitat, our homeworld. It was clear what our next move should be. Go to the Habitat and find who sent this message. If we find them, we find who killed the crew of the White Star in cold blood.